This is a map of Drangleic. You can find it tucked away in the house at the back of Majula, and as you make progress through the game, small flames begin to appear across it. Each one marks a key moment in your journey, but taken together, they become coordinates, a means to piece the world together. Last episode, we looked at the structure of Drangleic, how each level connects, and how the game compresses large travel distances. So today, let's see if we can work out exactly how the true continent of Drangleic, and far beyond, actually fits together. Before we get into it, a quick thank you to Displate for sponsoring today's video, the place for premium metal posters, including, of course, Dark Souls 2. I really love this one. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Displate has an enormous catalogue of over 200 officially licensed designs, including from software games, alongside artwork from thousands of independent artists. The variety is amazing, and allows you to pick designs from any number of your interests. The print quality is genuinely impressive, especially once the light catches them. I've had some for years, and they look as good as they did in the box. They mount magnetically, so there's no drilling into the wall, and if you ever have to swap things around, it's as simple as lifting one off and putting another up. That goes for when they're not quite at the right angle, too. There. Much better. You can also choose what type to go for, matte, gloss, and some can be texture, giving them this incredible 3D finish. If you'd like to have a look yourself, there are links in the description along with my discount code for up to 33% off. It really helps support the channel, so thank you if you decide to use it. Now then, back to Drangleic's true layout. We first need to establish what each of these 8 flames represent. They appear only after lighting specific bonfires and defeating the bosses tied to them. The first corresponds to the Forest of Fallen Giants, after defeating the last giant. Following along the coast, the hidden chamber marks the Rotten in the Black Gulch. Another appears round the corner for the Lost Sinner tied to the Salt Fort bonfire. Continuing round, the Old Iron King is marked from Eagle's Idol in Iron Keep. Further inland, Lower Brightstone Cove pairs to the Duke's deer Freya. Beyond the top edge of the map is the Shrine entrance bonfire, whose flame alights after receiving the Ashen Mist Heart from the Ancient Dragon. Or by killing them. Near the centre of the continent is the King's Gate, paired to the Throne Watcher and Defender. And Nashandra, depending on the version you're playing. Finally, completing our journey around the land, is the Undead Ditch bonfire in the Undead Crypt, after defeating Velstadt. Now, to dispel any doubts about this map representation before we go further, there's actually another official depiction of Drangleic in a more traditional format. This was in the original Collector's Edition, or you can find it in the Design Works book, which has tons of amazing art. I'll try to show some throughout the video. Between the two maps, we can confidently mark each key landscape before trying to add additional places within the map, and even beyond its borders. The first thing we need to correct is the orientation. This traditional map has a compass of sorts, so presumably this is the standard cardinal alignment with north, east, south and west. Which means this Majula map as we arrive at it is not in a cardinal direction. The Dragon Shrine isn't north of everything else, it's east. Majula is not on the south, but on the west coast, and so on. Now, you might be asking, how can we be sure? What if north is, for some reason, to the left of the traditional map? After all, this compass isn't particularly specific. Well, the first flame is the solution, pun not intended. The Forest of Fallen Giants. In the official map, this is located on the top left coast, and it's the highest coastal location on the map. Except this, but we'll return to that little number later. Then, according to the giant Lord Soul, the giants landed on the northern shores and set siege to King Vendrick's castle. So we can be sure this is the right orientation, with north at the top. Any other 90-degree rotation, i.e. so the compass is still pointing correctly, and the giants wouldn't be arriving from the top of the map. And just in case you needed more, both Shalquar and Magarold confirm the orientation when they talk about the Dragon Shrine and the ancient dragon.
You'll find a great creature far to the east, a colossal thing with the strength to match its size, or something playing the part at least.
Have you heard of the shrine on the eastern edge of Drangleic? Built to honour the dragons, they say. If only I knew how to get there, I'd go and I'd claim it for goodies.
In this orientation, the Dragon Aerie is nicely positioned in the distant east of the kingdom. Perfect. Alright, with that, let's now translate all our flames onto the official map. On the west coast, unmistakably, is Majula. The icon clearly depicts the tower that records the total worldwide death counter, and when you think about it, the Majula map might as well show its own location, because while the world's levels are much closer than they should be, what we discovered last episode is that directions between levels are largely accurate. And looking at the collision data helps to illustrate the relative angles between areas. Black Gulch lies almost directly beneath Majula. So, given this Majula map doesn't show depth, the Black Gulch's flame can presumably also represent Majula's rough coordinates. That shows it sitting in much the same place as the official map. Nice, our logic works. The shape of the bay between the Forest of Fallen Giants and Majula also makes a lot of sense, neatly explaining how we can see one from the other. Just south of the central hub is, of course, Hade's Tower of Flame. The icon on the map is clear, sitting within the adjacent gulf from Majula. Further down is an icon that we could make an estimated guess for, but thankfully we don't have to. This is the Lost Bastila, which has another Majula flame to corroborate the coordinates. The land's shape here also adds to our previous dive into Hade. Even though the collision data has No Man's Wharf right next to the sunken city, nothing can be seen in the environment. But with this context, it all makes sense. The Lost Bastila is on the other side of the peninsula, so our journey to No Man's Wharf takes us through the landmass, and then out the other side. The next flame sits in the south of Drangleic. The Majula map shows it's a mountainous region, and the official map confirms it. This icon represents the Iron Keep, depicting the huge bullhead. Which means the windmill icon northwest must of course be Harvest Valley and/or Earthen Peak. We touched on the infamous lift that reaches the Iron Keep already, but it's worth noting here that the map likely represents the original intention by the team if they'd had more time. Earthen Peak clearly sits within an already very mountainous region. It was meant to be the first step in a long climb up to the volcano's high altitude. And there's a sneak peek of this in the game too. When going to fast travel, the image for the area actually shows a mountain in the background, much closer than the skybox in the final level. So while the journey is still much further than a corridor and a lift to reach the Iron Keep, thematically it wouldn't have been nearly so jarring. Moving on, the next flame marked Seldora. It's the most eastern flame besides the Dragon Shrine, so I think it has to be this icon on the map. I guess it represents the Duke's mansion, but before it fell into ruin within the mountain. The Dragon Shrine is easy, the most eastern flame that resides outside the bounds of Drangleic entirely, something we'll come back to shortly. West of there is what can only be Uldia's Keep from the icon, whose position further illustrates the point I made at the end of the last episode. The keep is right in the middle of the huge mountain range there, and thus the journey to the end of it and the lift to the Dragon Aerie actually takes us through the mountains and out into the whole region beyond it, hence why the visuals take such a drastic turn from entrance to exit. Drangleic Castle is iconic, but just to be sure, yes, the Majula flame corroborates its position well. Also, I'm sure you'll remember how the collision map revealed the entrance to Aldia's Keep as one of the most chaotic parts of the map. But it's interesting that this shows that the keep is actually meant to be very close to Drangleic Castle. Finally is this icon, right at the top of the map. Even very close, it's unremarkable, and doesn't clearly pair with anything in game. There are various theories out there, such as how it might relate to Eleum Loyce, due to its associations with the north. But the Majula map might answer the question. It's not quite at the exact same position, but I think it's close enough. This flame corresponds to the Undead Crypt, which might explain why the icon is so unremarkable. It's not really a landmark like the others are, since it's underground. There are more reasons why I don't think this part of the map could relate to the final DLC, but let's focus on the map we can see first. Something I like about this part of the map is how barren the land north of Drangleic Castle appears to be, leading up to the Undead Crypt. To me, it feels symbolic of the journey of the dead here. Beneath lies the Shrine of Amana, an area under a sleepy musical spell. So perhaps even above, life doesn't dare to venture into the area much. Now our job starts to get a bit harder, since we've gone through all of Majula's flames, and there's still a few labelled locations on the official map, not to mention all sorts of other details that are hard to miss. But as a quick aside, you might have noticed that the flames on the Majula map are likely different to your own playthrough. Rather than being the typical orange, they're instead blue. That's a neat little detail. If you reach New Game Plus 10, or the same bonfire intensity through the bonfire static mechanic, the flames update to reflect that intensity. You can check bonfire intensity levels by looking at the numbers beside each fast travel image, like so. You'll need to kill the associated boss of the area each time too. I love this little feature. In our own world, orange flames are produced by incomplete combustion, i.e. it doesn't efficiently use all the fuel. Blue flames on the other hand denote much more efficient, clean combustion, burning at a far hotter temperature as a result. So, as you increase the intensity of your bonfire, and thus the area's power as a whole which draws from the fire, it is represented by a cleaner, hotter blue flame in Majula. Okay, what about the rest of the map icons? First is the forest just east of Majula, which I'm inclined to say is Hunstman's Copse for two main reasons. First is its proximity to Harvest Valley, the area after it in-game. Second is the story told in the area. As we know now, the skybox there shows a dense forest behind and a mountain range in the direction of travel. i.e. it matches up with the forest on the map and this ridge, thematically leading into what should have been a decently mountainous Harvest Valley. The only other area this might depict is the Shaded Woods, the final area on the surface that sits next to Majula. However, the Shaded Woods don't really have mountains in its environment, not to mention it leads to Drangleic Castle, Aldia's Keep, and the Doors of Pharros, not Harvest Valley. Thus, I think this area, east of Hunstman's Copse, depicts the Shaded Woods. Even though the journey to both areas from Majula is very brief in-game, it is slightly longer to the Shaded Woods. Plus, this forest leads towards Drangleic Castle and Aldia's Keep quite nicely. But most clear of all is this little building on the map. It matches the structure that houses the ruined Fork Road bonfire, also surrounded by trees. Which means, if this is the Shaded Woods, I believe the label southeast must denote the Doors of Pharros, the last connecting area to the Shaded Woods. That, fittingly, leads towards Seldora, even further southeast. After all, much like the Undead Crypt, this would explain why the map is so featureless here. There's nothing above ground. The entire area is a cave system, home of the nomadic Gurm people. According to their set, most Gurm descendants refuse contact with outsiders, and live with a deep contempt for those who exiled them. Where they lived before exile is difficult to say, but at least there's one who doesn't refuse contact today.
Who are you? I Gavlan. Gavlan will, Gavlan deal. Gavlan wants soul. Many, many soul.
The Doors of Pharros must sit within the beginnings of this mountain range, therefore, and lead through it to come out the other side in Saldora. A bit like Aldia's Keep leads to the Dragon Aerie. Alright, that's all the official labels taken care of, but there's still a number of oddities to clear up. First, returning to Shaded Woods, is this area just to the north. There's a bridge and even a skull symbol on the map. The bridge looks like a hanging wooden structure, so it can't relate to the path up to Drangleic Castle. Similarly, I doubt it could be the Huntsman's Copse bridge to the Executioner Chariot, even ignoring where we are on the map, since that bridge is presumably very recent. You can see the broken supports for the original bridge below, and those were made of stone. And what about the skull? Perhaps it represents the curse pot somehow. Again though, this doesn't quite line up, since that path is the one that leads to the Doors of Pharros, i.e. going south rather than north. Another thought could be that this relates to things betwixt. In the collision data, all these areas confusingly overlap, which could suggest their proximity. And many do theorize that the area is a bridge point between life and death, given the prologue. But it all feels very speculative. Let me know if you have any ideas below. Moving on, I think it's fair to say these maps are topographic. That's to say they only depict features on the surface. This is why a number of areas are altogether absent. The Pit, Grave of Saints, Black Gulch, or Shrine of Amana for instance. And only a couple key underground areas are shown. Plus, there are plenty of fun icons that are far too speculative to discern anything about. Though they are charming. I for one like this sea creature off the southwest coast. That's the map sorted. Or so you may think, but we are far from done. There are so many lands beyond Drangleic to add. And perhaps more surprisingly, there are some within the kingdom too. So, what actually constitutes Vendrick's kingdom? According to the Brigandhood, mountains surround Drangleic on 3 sides. Now, this is a strange one. Whether looking at the Majula map or the official map, the first impression doesn't really match. There's one enormous mountain range bisecting the map, sure, but framing the kingdom on 3 sides? I see a couple ways to interpret it. One is that Drangleic originally meant only the main castle before Vendrick expanded through the land, since the castle itself perfectly fits the Brigand's Hood's description. On 3 sides it's closely surrounded by mountains, and then to the north is a vast open area. Alternatively, it could be referencing the mountain range we previously looked at in the Huntsman's Copse. Though smaller, these are still a substantial barrier of entry. This range, plus the Iron Keep mountains, and then the mountains down the middle of the map would complete the picture, again leaving the north as the open direction, so to speak. Either way, that's likely why the Dragon Shrine is outside the Majula map. It's beyond the realm of the true kingdom of Drangleic. I'm more inclined to the latter interpretation myself, in no small part due to Vendrick's most famous war, urged on by Nashandra of course. If mountains surround your kingdom on all sides except the north, it would make sense to try to conquer anyone in that direction, since they pose the most direct threat. According to the Seabow, there is an unexplored continent far to the north, beyond a great sea, a land that was most likely home to the giants. The bow also describes how the sea itself is full of monsters, adding to the map detailing. Additionally, the Varangian armor says, the coastline stretches far in northern Drangleic. This phrasing is another reason why I don't think this northern icon on the map could relate to Eleum Loyce, beyond of course how the map was made before the DLCs were completed. If the coastline stretches far in northern Drangleic, to me that suggests the coastline reaches far into the north, i.e. it goes much further up than we can see on the map. The language wouldn't make sense if it only meant the coast has a long northern edge, and simply continues far to the east. Thus, we know there is much more beyond the top of this map, even before the Northern Sea, past which are the giants. And this is where I think Eleum Loyce must therefore be located. The Crown of the Ivory King says, far to the north, a king built a great cathedral to appease the raging flame. And yet, even this far north, there is still no sign of the sea. Unless, somehow, this is all incredibly stable, thick sea ice. Behind, presumably south, we can see mountains though, perhaps the end of the primary range in Drangleic. According to the Ivory King Ultra Greatsword, it is said that the Ivory King was once the highest ranking knight in his home of Pharosa, famed for its god of war. His sages too, as per Azal's staff or their armour, were from Pharosa. So where is Pharosa? Vengal comes to our aid here.
I was born in Pharosa, it's a land in the distant east.
So does that mean the Ivory King and his followers made a huge journey from the east all the way to the north before setting up Eleum Loyce? His sage's armour does say how they only earned their title after completing a great journey of great hardship. Well, I think the two regions were a bit closer than it all sounds, since Pharosa was in all likelihood a pretty northern region too, both because the sage armour is called the North Warder Robe, and because it is clearly built for the cold. Other eastern factions, as we shall see, don't share such a climate. And no, it's not because they travelled to the north. The description relates broadly to Pharosa, not just the Ivory King's contingent. Thus, I think Vengal should have said northeast, and instead is just speaking vaguely. Perhaps he means it is much further east than it is north. I'd therefore venture that the Ivory King's journey was simply westwards from his hometown, and it's just that all his story is far outside the official map we can see. For a change of place, let's jump to the south of Drangleic, to the realm of the Iron King. His base of operations was, of course, the Iron Keep, here, but his influence was once much larger, as the DLC explores. Past the altar deep within the Iron Keep and through a door, is the tower that the old Iron King used to produce iron. So, Brume Tower is presumably in the same broad area of the map as the Iron Keep. As such, I'm inclined to say it simply sits southeast of the Iron Keep, further within the volcanic mountain range. Perhaps this area makes sense, surrounded by ridges that would block the view back. After all, the DLC's environment is epic, but kind of featureless beyond the surrounding mountains. For the present day, that's all we need to add to the map, but for interest, the region was once actually split into two before the Iron King took control. The area where Brume Tower was built once belonged to the kingdom of Ven, as described by the Scorching Iron Scepter. The Ring of Blades adds further to this, saying how the kingdom of Alkan also flourished across Drangleic, and yet both kingdoms fell to the ruin of rivalry, despite being founded by the same man. The Bellkeepers are, of course, ignorant of their ruin, as their gear describes. To this day, the forbidden love of the Prince of Alkan and the Princess of Ven manipulates these marionettes. Surely they never imagined that their dolls would outlast their own kingdoms. Thus do they continue to guard the respective bells.
The prince made me to guard the bell of Ven. In Ven, the bell of the fine prince. In Alkan, the bell of the princess.
But from the bells we can extrapolate some of the kingdom's sizes. Alkan stretched from Hunstman's Copse to Brume Tower, where Ven encompassed at least the Lost Bastille and of course the Belfry Luna. But this was likely far larger in their prime, as the Ring of Blades suggests. Strayed really isn't lying when he talks about the rise and fall of many kingdoms within the land.
Many kingdoms rose and fell on this tract of earth. Mine was by no means the first.
Finally, we reach the first DLC, Shulva, a difficult one since it's underground. It's even reached through the deepest level in all Drangleic to push that fact. Indeed, the puzzling stone sword found there says that its stone is only found within caves of the gutter. So it might be that Shulva rests just beyond the Black Gulch after all. In which case, it probably sits in a somewhat central position within Drangleic, albeit far beneath everything else. The story of Shulva is relevant here too, as described by the slumbering dragon crest shield, that talks of the Drakeblood's failure to kill sin. The survivors buried their wrongdoings in the past, and in a show of terrible conceit, attempted to make amends by carrying on the knowledge of the wasted land. To this end, a new kingdom was born. The Archdrake Sect are the keepers of Lindelt's histories, including the only record of its foundation, a tome they have very good reason to keep hidden away. The land of Lindelt is governed by stringent laws, and those who dare defy them are punished without mercy. But it's difficult to place where Lindelt is on the map. There are no outright references to its location. What we do know is that they were direct enemies of Drangleic from the description of the Archdrake helm. So they can't have been far. Perhaps a neighbouring kingdom. The Archdrakes are found in the Shrine of Amana, but I don't think that means the area relates to Lindelt necessarily. In the Japanese they are called Archdrake pilgrims, and their relics repeatedly talk about their running from the past. That could very much apply to their current station in the Shrine of Amana, too. Indeed, Lycia's own outfit says how Lindelt's inhabitants often travel to distant lands for ascetic training. I'm inclined to say Lindelt is adjacent to Drangleic in some capacity. Perhaps they were stationed near the Forest of Fallen Giants, a region not too far from Shulva or the Shrine of Amana. It's unlikely they were set up in the south, since we've already covered the history there, nor are they equipped for the north. So the alternative is they're just east of Drangleic, perhaps next door to where the Dragon Shrine is. Unless, of course, they somehow competed for a section of Drangleic itself. It would explain how the Archdrakes ended up where they are now. Now that we've populated Drangleic, let's complete the map by adding the factions beyond its border. We actually hear about a couple of other eastern lands, beyond Pharosa of course, so let's add those neighbours. There's Mira, the eastern land that is home to not just Proud Knights, but also Shadow Knights. And then there's Hugo, where Benhart is from, and he says,
I journeyed from the distant east to perfect my swordsmanship.
Given Lindelt's rivalry, if it sat in the east, I think it would have been somewhat central to directly clash with Vendrick's kingdom. I believe Hugo would be south of this, thanks to the corrosive urn that speaks of the land. Giant anthills created by the corrosive ants line the horizon of the desert land of Hugo. The set of Horus, of Kings of the Desert Land, pushes this further. All of which is strongly reminiscent of another area in the game, the sand-covered Seldora. As such, it's fair to assume these areas might border one another in the land's southeast. Though Hugo sounds like it might have a more extreme climate, so I'd imagine it sit even further southeast, perhaps beyond the mountain range. As such, let's put Mira in the north of this eastern belt, since we've little reason to place it further east than the other regions. The final kingdoms we hear about lie beyond Drangleic entirely, perhaps as islands, or even completely across the sea. There's the Land of Giants, of course, to the north. Then it seems the continent itself simply continues out to the east, to unknown eastern realms. But what about west, or south?
I came from the west, from Volgan. Have you been there? It's a lively place, vibrant with trade. Very competitive, of course. And you have to grease the wheels to get anywhere.
Volgan must be an interesting place, a hub of trade that sits either on the eastern edge of a continent to the west of Drangleic, or even as an island sitting between two continents. And it seems the land is home to a varied populace as a result. For example, the Falconers came from Volgan previously. Domestic Volgan soldiers are infamously timid, so it's no wonder that this fierce band of mercenary Falconers was hired to compensate. In practice, they serve as bodyguards for the affluent elite, and they serve well, such that nobody dares scrutinize their backgrounds. Even the elite wish to hide their histories. Volgan appears to have a complicated history in this sense. But there's more.
A group calling themselves the Blue Sentinels have gained much power in Volgan. You can't even run a shop without their blessing. They claim to be working for the greater good, but it's absolute hogwash.
Beyond the insight into Volgan's culture, this matches how the Blue Sentinels have set up in ruined Hade. It's the closest point on the coast of Drangleic to Volgan, off in the west. Laddersmith Gilligan does say,
Huh? No, I wasn't born here. I'm from a wee bit out west. That's all.
though his accent doesn't match Morglin's, so perhaps there are some smaller lands out in Volgan's direction too. Lannifer is the furthest land to the south, and follows a strict edict of isolationism. The rare visitor from Lannifer is always a little odd. There's not much else to go on for the land, which I guess fits the lore well. Magrold is from Lannifer, one of the few eccentrics bold enough to travel to distant lands. And then there was Durgo, who defended the land from intruders. The fact that his name is known well beyond Lannifer, to me illustrates just how well he defended the kingdom, and that many must have tried to breach its borders, failed, and shared his name upon their return to Drangleic. Finally, we have Malfia, which Rosabeth speaks of.
Master Carillion and I are from Malfia to the south, a land lush with sorcery and pyromancy.
A land between Drangleic and Lannifer, since that's the most southern land. We can roughly estimate how far off the coast of Drangleic it might be, because of the story told about the Flexile Sentry by the Barbed Club. The Sentry crammed inmates of the overflowing Bastille onto a rickety ship, and cast them out to the open sea. The majority of them drowned or starved, but a few hardy survivors made land to the south, and imparted their knowledge of sorcery to the people there. So, what made these survivors from prison so skilled in sorcery, you might ask? Well, we actually meet an example of the magical power the region once had in Strayed.
So, how long was I sat petrified?
Long enough for the old kingdom to have crumbled, I see. Long enough for Olafis to rise, fall, and fade away, evidently.
The Lost Bastille was, at the time, the kingdom of Olafis, one which commanded magic with great skill. The first teacher was apparently Olenford, revered as the father of sorcery in Malfia, according to his staff. But in Scholar of the First Sin edition, it adds, some hold the theory that Malfian sorceries and pyromancies originated within the boundaries of Drangleic in ages past. Of course, we know from Strayed, or just the first game, that Izalith created pyromancies.
Pyromancy was created by the ancient Witch of Fire. She harnessed the power of flame and melded it into pyromancy.
But this confirms the origin story for Malfia's sorceries too, that they came from Olafis previously. And there you have it, the entire world as we know it of Dark Souls 2, including a few remnants from the past. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did, and let me know if you'd like more. If you made it this far, consider supporting the channel and get early access to upcoming releases, feature your own theories on the channel, or even get access to new Lore Before Bed videos ad-free for less than $1. Your support makes content like this possible, so thank you.